Yvonne Ortiz, and this is Stories of Transformation, an NRCDV radio production. As a part of our Domestic Violence Awareness Month activities, each week in October we'll bring you our Why I Am an Advocate series, so you can hear directly from individuals working against gender-based violence as they share their personal story. In our third episode of Why I'm an Advocate, we explore embracing an intersectional approach. Writer, feminist, womanist, and civil rights activist Audre Lorde famously said, "There is no such thing as a single-issue struggle because we do not live single-issue lives." Intersectionality is a framework for social justice that recognizes and responds to the rich and complex identities that individuals hold and the multi-layer reality of their lived experiences. Today's storyteller is Hania Luna of the Tahirih Justice Center in Houston, Texas. Hania calls the rural areas of Central Valley in California home. She has a passion for social justice informed by her work with various immigrant communities and her personal experiences as a hyphenated American. Currently, her work is centered around supporting immigrant survivors of gender-based violence with social services. Her story explores the interrelatedness of humanity, the experience of biculturalism, the journey of immigration integration, and the power of advocacy in building resilience in those who experience trauma. Let's hear from Hania.
I'm an advocate because I've always been one. I can't remember a time when I have not identified with the underdog. I can't remember a time when I have not felt some level of moral outrage at a situation, a person, or a system that is unfair, disrespectful, or rude towards a vulnerable group. In my natural state, I'm a people person, and I take interest in people's struggles. I joke with my friends about the heart I carry on my sleeve, but it's so true. I'm told I make fast friends, and to me, being open to new connections gives me this hope. If I'm able to connect with another human being, I am confirming my own humanity, our interrelatedness throughout the history of time. One moment in a long line of moments. And if that brings me comfort, maybe it also brings that person comfort. For me, working with immigrant survivors of violence has been a natural extension of personal knowledge of their issues. My parents were immigrants. I grew up watching my widowed mother take over the family business and learn to negotiate her own power among a traditionally white and male-led industry in our own community. Witnessing her strength despite the odds shaped much of my advocate thinking. I've always been surrounded by strong women of color, coping with life's challenges and doing their best to survive. Growing up in rural California in a Mexican family taught me resiliency within my biculturalism. I was lucky to learn both English and Spanish at an early age and be able to navigate the sometimes tricky situations that I would find myself in. I was that kid, for example, who one day awkwardly had to interpret for her own parent at a parent-teacher conference. Due to lack of resources on my school's part, due to having to make do last minute, I learned to facilitate situations early on. I'm an advocate because I've always felt different myself. I've felt different and proud of those differences, those layers that make me who I am. I've always felt my experience, my feelings didn't completely fit with those that surrounded me. The experience of the mostly white, East Coast, college-educated classmates I met, the experience of the brown, stay-at-home mothers in my own family. I've straddled both sides of the hyphenated American experience. So in a way, I feel that because I refuse to choose one side of me over the other, because I refuse to allow myself to be reduced to someone else's label, someone else's stereotype, that I have had to also learn to advocate for myself, for my own existence. to advocate for those differences that I love about myself, to advocate for being just as Mexican, being just as American as the next person. Sometimes that transition, that cultural toggling is not so seamless, but through it, I am grateful for having that opportunity, for being able to choose to honor my ancestors' heritage, grateful to choose to honor the country that has given me so many personal freedoms and rights at birth. I have this early memory of wanting to join the Girl Scouts in my hometown. I was maybe in kindergarten. I show up to the school cafeteria that evening with my mother, and I noticed that mostly everyone there didn't look like me or spoke Spanish like me. I immediately felt I didn't belong, that I thought the Girl Scouts were the coolest. So we stayed for the duration of the info session. The situation was so uncomfortable for me. In the end, I didn't end up joining. Towards the end of the event, my mother and I linked up with a classmate's mother who did speak Spanish. We didn't know she was there, and she was encouraging me. But by then, 5-year-old me had decided, nope, this does not feel safe. Now, when I think of my clients who are immigrant mothers or have children being raised in this bicultural environment, I sometimes remember those similar experiences I had growing up. My natural instinct is to tell them, to prepare them with as much information as I have, so that they can feel comfortable speaking up for themselves, so that they can find their own voice and feel confident in doing so. Because immigrant integration is difficult. Because immigrant integration for survivors of violence is even more difficult. I say to them in my mind, I know. I have felt different in the room. I have been uncomfortable asking for help. But you know, it won't always be this way. It gets better. Yet at the same time, I'm having this solidarity dialogue in my mind when I meet my clients to support them. I also am keenly aware of my privilege and the skills that I have now that allow me to be able to help them. Something as simple as language access. Speaking someone's language can have a huge impact on their ability to trust a person, to trust a new situation, to feel safe. I recognize that at some point when I graduated, sure, I had a choice to do something else for a living, but why didn't I end up an accountant, for example, instead of an advocate? Being an advocate came naturally. Maybe I can't feel good about my own progress if I'm not helping others also advance. My own family is still working through integration. I am the first generation. I feel that while I'm still working through my own stuff, through my identity, I'm able to support vulnerable groups because I have witnessed the struggle. I have felt it. With time and proper support, things can improve for survivors. People can be kind. Services can be provided with sensitivity to trauma and allow a survivor to more easily build resilience. This is why I am an advocate. I am an advocate because my mother was an immigrant. I am an advocate because I am the eldest of 3 sisters. I am an advocate because I'm a woman of color. I'm an advocate because advocating is what I have always done. I see an injustice, I get fired up, and I dare to question it. I am an advocate because sometimes it takes someone else telling you you can do it for you to not feel that you're alone in your experience. I hope that I am able to be there for my clients, for the survivors I work for, in the way others have been there for me.
I want to thank Hania for stepping out today and sharing her powerful story. Tune in to the next episode of the I Am an Advocate series to hear from 2 advocates who demonstrate the spirit of our movement. To hear more NRCDV podcasts and to access additional resources on gender-based violence and related topics, visit www.nrcdv.org. Stories of Transformation is an NRCDV radio podcast production brought to you by the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence. Support is provided by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Administration for Children and Families, Family and Youth Services Bureau.